Jabari, I was going to ask you which league is handling it best, but then I guess that it depends on your perspective on how it should be handled. I guess there are different ideas about how to do it, and I'll tell you what I mean. When the NFL said, if you're triple vaxxed and asymptomatic, you don't need to be tested. Initially, I thought, well, that's like you don't want to find, what you don't know won't hurt you. But then I thought, look, you want to field a team. You've got fans. You've got reasons to do that. If you're asymptomatic and triple vaxxed, you're probably, even the science would say, less contagious. And if your teammates are triple vaxxed, is that okay, Jabari? Do you think that was a good policy that the NFL had to be able to field teams?
Well, good morning, Joe. Listen, you can argue which policy is good, which policy is bad. If the NBA is doing a better job than the NFL, if the NHL has any clue what they're doing at all. The bottom line is, listen, all of these leagues have done the best that they could to handle the protocols, changing on the fly as circumstances change. I actually give kudos to the NFL. Listen, they got their negative headlines early on, guys like Aaron Rodgers, Antonio Brown mocking the NFL with their misleading of their vaccine statuses. But, for the most part, the object is, the goal is to not cancel games, right? To postpone as few games as possible. And I feel like the NFL has done a good job at that. You're not going to agree 100% on the protocols. You're not going to agree 100% on what, who should be tested, who shouldn't be tested. But, the NFL is the biggest entertainment in American television, right? And we need football, right? That's proven. We need football. And for the most part, they've given us football. And they're on the verge of finishing their season on time, which is the goal. The NBA, NHL still have the ways to go. They still have to, postpone games. They still got to fit scheduling in with arenas starting to get filled again, with entertainment concerts and all those things coming back. So they have a tougher road. But at the same time, everybody changing, the leagues changing their, policies to say that players can return sooner. I think that's going to cut down on the postponements, cut down on the bad product that the NBA has been giving us over the last week and a half. And for the NFL, again, it just allows them to finish their season on time right now as we speak in February. So, listen, back and forth, the protocols are the protocols. I think we're all going to have our opinions on which ones are better. But like I said, I think the NFL has done a good job up until this point.
So, Patrick, even when I posit that the NFL has done a good job, I immediately am aware of that someone could say, oh, it's all about the money, huh? So you got to have these games. You got to. But Jabari points out it is good to have NFL and if you can do it safely, is there a middle ground where you can make where you don't have to feel guilty about saying, yeah, I want these guys to play. I want people to be able to go to the stadiums. I want to be able to watch it on TV. I want to be able to do all these things if we can do it safely. Am I wrong?
No, Joe, I don't think you're wrong. And again, if you're looking at the NFL and the NBA, they are in part following the CDC guidelines, right? The CDC recently came out and reduced the number of days that people have to be isolated in case that they test positive, but they are asymptomatic. So I have no qualms at all. There is a business here, and there are revenues involved, and there are TV partners and advertisers. What I am concerned about are two things, Joe. One is the NHL, because the NHL, unlike the NBA and the NFL, they really have an issue where you're dealing with two different countries that have two totally different guidelines. The Canadians are not getting looser right now with the way they're treating this. They're actually getting tighter. So this makes it very difficult for a league that's got to play in two countries. The other one, and this is looming obviously in Beijing, is the Olympics. And we just saw that Michaela Schifrin, a gold medalist skier, she just tested positive. This is the huge fear that broadcasters and advertisers for the Olympics have. What if last minute somebody like this, a marquee athlete, has to rule themselves out of competition? It could be really devastating for the ratings for the Olympics, for advertisers and for broadcasters.
So what's the answer? Are we in the middle of a pandemic that was supposed to be over like 6 times already? It's not.
No, I mean, again, all you can do is create guidelines to try to keep players safe, but at the same time realizing we have to follow the guidelines, the medical advice that's being given, but you still have a league to run. You still have an organization to run. And, what's very interesting, Joe, just real briefly, is I've been to a lot of different sporting events just in the last month alone. Here in Charlotte, in Las Vegas, in St. Louis, and every sport and every city is going about treating their fans slightly differently, where in some cases you're wearing masks, you have to show vaccination cards. And in other circumstances, it's a little bit more lax. So very interesting to see these differences across America as we go through this pandemic.
And Patrick, you point out a good point, about. Well, I'm sorry, Patrick, you put on a good point about, jurisdictions changing their guidelines. And I'm curious to see how that's going to look at the top of the new year, because you're going to have cities like Philadelphia, Chicago, Boston. They're going to be coming online with requiring vaccination cards to even enter these arenas. And so how does that affect leagues like the NHL and the NBA? Will players in those home cities still be able to play? Or will we have a situation like Brooklyn where Kyrie Irving isn't allowed to play in Brooklyn, but he's allowed to play on a road game? So, I was curious to see how that's going to, impact things moving forward as 2022 is near.